What's up, friends? Are you looking for ways to get more yield out of the tokens that you're currently holding? Or maybe you're holding a token for the long term and want the ability to have additional liquidity on that asset by borrowing against it. We're going to talk about both of those things today with a deep dive into Benqi, which is a great tool that allows you to do both of those things. Now, before we get into the details there, I do want to say nothing that we're going to share today is financial advice. This is purely for informational purposes only. Please do your own research if you are considering any of the things that we're going to talk about today. All right, so with that, let's talk about why you might want to lend your assets. So we talked in previous videos about ways that you can actually stake your AVAX in order to earn additional yield on that. So you can do that either through native staking, where you actually go through Core Wallet to do it. You can also do liquid staking, which you can do with Benqi as well, where you can hold staked AVAX that gives you that liquidity, but then you also earn that additional yield off of doing that. So those are both options that you can have. Definitely, if you haven't watched that previous video, would encourage you to go check that out. One of the things that I would say also, though, is sometimes you want to hold an asset that you can't stake in the same way. Let's say, for example, you wanted to hold USDC or USDT. Well, both of those assets are great as a stable coin, but they don't have a way for you to natively stake those. Now, one thing you could do if you wanted to earn additional yield on that is to lend it out. So you can actually use something like Benqi and earn additional APY on the lending that you do with either of those things. So that's one great way that you can use that. Now, on the borrowing side, one of the great ways that you can use that is if you have tokens that you want to hold for the long term. So let's say you are really bullish on Collateral, which is a meme coin on Avalanche that I'm a big fan of. And if you wanted to hold that and still have some liquidity to be able to do other things, you could actually supply that within Benqi as collateral and then borrow against that. Now, there's some factors you want to think about when you do that. We're going to get into that once we start doing the demo, but definitely something that you could consider as an option if you felt like it was something you wanted to hold for a long time but still borrow against. All right, so let's talk about how you can do both of those things. So we're going to actually do a quick demo of what that looks like on Benqi. So the way that you're going to do that is you're going to go to Benqi.fi, which is their website. You'll see there's a few different options there. Today, we're going to really dig into lending and borrowing. They do have the ability also for you to do liquid staking, and then you can also use their Ignite program to set up a validator. So we're not going to go through those today, but if that interests you, definitely would encourage you to check that out. All right, so you're going to click on lending and borrow, and then from there, it's going to take you to a page that looks something like this. And so you'll see a few different options. There's both supply, and then there's an option to borrow. So if you are going to borrow, you do always need to go through supply first because you do need to have collateral in order to be able to do that. So if you look here on the page, you'll see that we have an option to supply, and you can choose the token that you want to supply. So there's a few different tokens that are available for you to do that. You can supply AVAX, you can supply staked AVAX, USDT, USDC. We mentioned Collateral before as well. You can also supply Key, which is the token of Benqi. So let's take a look at some of those options. So we're going to start with AVAX. Let's say, for example, I wanted to stake half an AVAX here. You can either do that by typing in the amount that you want. It'll also know how much AVAX you might have in your wallet, and you can actually choose just the percent of your total supply that you have in the wallet that you're using. So you'll see there half actually is 50% of what I have in this wallet, and you can see in there what I would get in terms of APY. So there's two different APYs that you're going to see on here. So there's one called supply APY, which is the APY that you get from the lending itself. And then you also have, in some cases, additional incentive APY called distribution APY that you get. So AVAX itself does not actually have additional distribution APY, but you can see both of those there. Another thing to know is if you are supplying this for the purpose of borrowing against it, you can actually see here the collateral factor. So whatever amount of AVAX I supply, I can borrow up to 74% of that in terms of collateral. So let's say I staked $100 worth of AVAX and I wanted to borrow USDC from that, then I could borrow 74 USDC is basically what that means. So in this particular case, there's no cap on how much I can supply. So some tokens may have a cap for that, but for this one, it doesn't. And so we'll see that there. So that's with AVAX. Let's look at a couple of different other ones just to kind of get a sense of what's offered there. So let's say we have staked AVAX. So staked AVAX, as we talked about before, is a token that Benqi has. It's the liquid staking token for AVAX through Benqi. And if you look here, you'll see that the rates are a little bit different for that. So the supply APY is 0.02. Now, keep in mind with staked AVAX, you're earning APY already just for holding that token, but you'll also see there's a distribution APY. So that's that incentive APY that you're going to get. Now, one thing to kind of know is what those are paid out in. So if we look at distribution APY, you'll see here that you're going to get paid in different tokens than you might if you were using the other one. So you'll see here AVAX rewards that we're going to get 82 or 0.82% of our reward in AVAX, and then we're going to get 0.46 in key. So important to kind of know that you will get them in different tokens, but they'll calculate the APY based on the overall value. So you'll see that there. We'll look at a couple other ones. Let's look at USDT. So you'll see for this one, it is a little bit higher rate that you're going to get for that. So supply APY is 7.02, distribution APY is 3.02. And then you'll also see the collateral factor is a little bit different as well. So you'll see it's 72.5 is the collateral factor. So it is going to change. Just kind of be sure to look at that whenever you're supplying certain tokens into there. So we'll look at USDC as well. You'll see for that one, we have a 6.79% supply APY and then distribution APY of 2.1. Again, these do change over time. So whenever you're watching this video, that may be different at that moment. But this is just to kind of get a sense of how some of them are offering the different APYs that they have. You'll see it as well for USDC. It's a little bit higher collateralization factor that we have for that particular token. We'll look at a couple of other ones here. So let's look at wrapped ether, for example. So you see for this, again, we have a 1.86 supply APY. It does not have a distribution APY, and then it has a 75% collateralization factor. We'll look at one more here. We're actually going to look at key. And so you'll see here, there's no supply APY, but it does have a distribution APY of 4.4, and then a collateral factor of 40%. And then you will see for this one, we talked about a little bit before, some do have a supply cap. You have a cap of up to 100 million key that you'd be able to stake, or that you'd be able to lend here. All right, so we'll go ahead and look at one more of those. Let's go ahead and take a look at Kakinu. Now for this one, it is an interesting one to look at. So you'll notice that the supply APY is actually 0%, as is the distribution APY. So for this one in particular, you're not necessarily going to earn any additional yield by supplying it, but the reason you might want to supply is if the event that you wanted to go ahead and borrow against it. Again, do your own research, make sure you're making the right decision for your risk profile. But if you do believe it is going to go up, then you might want to supply it here so that you could borrow against it versus trading that token for something else. So for this one, you'll notice that the collateral factor is lower than it was for the others. It's 40%. The reason for that, again, being a meme coin, price fluctuations do happen pretty regularly. So it may go up drastically, it may go down drastically. And so just in order to prevent liquidation risk for you, the collateral factor is a little bit lower. So it's definitely one thing to keep aware of. One thing you'll notice is the supply cap is set at 2 billion KOC. So you'll see there's a limit to that as well. So let's go ahead and start supplying some of these just so we can see how it'll work when we want to go ahead and borrow. So I do happen to hold some KOC in this particular wallet. So I have 5 million KOC in the wallet, and I'm going to go ahead and supply all of it. So I'll supply 100% of that. So I'm going to click approve and supply. You'll see I will get a pop-up that shows I need to approve the transaction. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we're going to wait for that to be confirmed. Take just a moment, and then it is complete. All right, now we'll have one more confirmation to approve. I'm going to click that here. We'll wait for that to process. And then once that is done, my Kakinu will be supplied within the Benqi supply. All right, so if I scroll down here just a bit, you will see down below that I do have that Kakinu supplied. I have 5 million KOC in there. If I did want to withdraw it, I could click there to withdraw. I don't want to do that though. In this case, I do want to go ahead and use that as collateral. Now, before I click over to the borrowing tab, I want to make sure to enable that. I'm going to have a pop-up that'll ask me to confirm that I want to do that. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'll have the confirmation. I'm going to go ahead and click on approve. And then after just a moment, it's going to go through and my collateral is enabled. So now I can borrow against that token that I have. Now, let's say I wanted to supply a few different tokens. So I want to do some AVAX as well. I'm going to click over here to AVAX. I do want to do, let's say I'll do half an AVAX. Again, this is my demo wallet, so I don't have a ton in there. So I'm going to click on supply for that. I'm going to supply that AVAX. It's going to have me approve it. I'm going to wait for that confirmation, and my AVAX is now supplied. So you'll see down here, I have both of those. So you can see the Kakinu that I have supplied. That's in a little bit of a different category. So it's an Avalanche ecosystem market, whereas the AVAX is in a core market. So we won't go into the details about the difference of those, but just know there are two different markets for that. And you can see here, again, what I have available. Now, my AVAX, I have not approved it to use as collateral yet. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to click that toggle over there. I'm going to confirm the transaction. And once that goes through, we are all set to go. So now I have some AVAX supplied. I have some Cockinu supplied. All right, so now that we have our token supplied, let's go ahead and take a look at the borrowing tab so we can see what's available to us there. All right, so from here, you'll see that there's a few different tokens I have available that I can borrow. Now, one of the things I did mention a little bit before was that there's two different groups. There's core markets and there's Avalanche ecosystem markets. One of the things you want to know about how that works is if you supply into the core markets, then you also are borrowing from the core markets. And the same thing with the Avalanche ecosystem markets. If you're supplying there, then you're also borrowing from that market. So a little bit different there in terms of what you can do. So if I'm borrowing from the core market, you remember I did supply some AVAX, so then I can borrow from that. So let's say I wanted to borrow some staked AVAX using my AVAX as collateral. So you can see what I'm able to borrow. So I have 0.318 AVAX is how much I can borrow for that. So let's say I wanted to borrow 0.2, and you'll see here that what my borrowing APY is. So it's going to be a 2.1 APY that I would pay in order to borrow against my AVAX for that. You can also see how much I'll get, the current USD value of that, and then also the limit as well. So if I wanted to go ahead and borrow that, I could just click here and then borrow that staked AVAX from that. The other tokens you have, so you can also borrow USDT. Again, you're going to see the limit that I have for that. Again, these are in the core markets. And so you'll see I have USDT. For that, I have an APY of 11.91. So it is a little bit higher than that staked AVAX would be. And then a distribution APY of 4.04. Now, one thing that is interesting with this is that I'm going to pay that borrowing APY of 11.9, but I'll also receive that distribution APY for doing that. So it's just an incentive for participating in that. Again, those may change over time, but that's currently what it is for borrowing USDT. So if I wanted to borrow that, I would click that and I would be able to do it. So let's say in this case, I do want to borrow the USDT. So I'm going to click on borrow. I'm going to get a option to approve that. I'm going to approve it. We're going to wait for that confirmation. All right. And now the transaction's completed. So my USDT is now in my wallet. And you can see my net APY changed. So I was earning some net APY when I supplied it, and now I'm paying some APY when I borrowed it. So the net of that is I'm paying 1.21% for borrowing that USDT. So that's what that'll look like. All right, so we'll take a look at one more example here. So I'm going to go ahead and borrow using my Cockinu that I supplied within the Avalanche ecosystem markets, and I can borrow for that. You'll see there's one option here. I can borrow USDC for that. So I'm going to click on that. You'll see my borrow limit is 2.66 USDC. Let's just say for this example, I'm going to borrow 1 USDC. You'll see what the terms of that are going to be. So it's 5.36 borrow APY. There is no distribution APY for this one, so it'll be just paying that 5.36. You'll also recall that when I supplied the Cockinu, it doesn't pay any APY for supplying it. So it really is just me paying that 5.36 in order to borrow against that as my collateral. All right, so let's go ahead and borrow. So I'm going to have a transaction that I'll approve, and it's going to go through. I'm waiting for that to be confirmed. All right, and that is now done. So now if we take a look at my wallet, you'll see that I have those tokens here. I have my 5.19 USDT. I still have some AVAX that I have kept in my wallet. Yeah, you'll see the USDC as well. So those are in my wallet. On the blockchain, I can use them anywhere that I want, not just within Benqi. So now a couple of things I wanted to show you down here when we're actually looking at our loan. So you'll see here, there's a few different things. We did borrow two different tokens. We borrowed USDT against our AVAX. We borrowed USDC against our Cockinu. And so you'll look here, there's a few different things. There's one for health. So you have a 1.59 health. So what that is it's a measure of how close to liquidation am I. So if, for example, my AVAX were to decrease in value quite a bit, then I might get liquidated. So meaning my AVAX would be forfeited in exchange for the USDT that I borrowed against it. So you want to always be mindful of if you do supply a token as collateral, if it drops too much, you might have to repay your loan earlier, or whatever your token you supplied is going to get taken in exchange for it. So something to be very aware of anytime you do borrow as well. So the higher that number is, the less chance I have of being liquidated. The lower it is, then the more risk of being liquidated that I might be. You'll also see here, it'll show me my APY, both what I'm paying and then also what I am receiving in terms of the distribution APY rewards. So we'll look down here at the bottom so you can see my USDC. I did not borrow as much of that as I could have. So you'll see that my health is a little bit higher. So it's green 2.67. So the higher, the better. Remember that as well. Now, that's essentially all I have to do. If I just want to borrow against these and hold those assets or use them elsewhere, I can do that. But if you want to repay them, it's pretty easy to do that as well. So let's go ahead and repay my USDC loan. I'm going to repay all of it. We'll wait for that to process. All right, so now my USDC has been repaid and I'm able to borrow against that again if I wanted to, or just leave the loan repaid. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for my USDT. I'm going to go ahead and repay all of it. I'm going to do the max. We'll approve that. All righty. I'm going to have one more step to go ahead and click repay. All right, so now that both of my loans have been repaid, you can see that my net APY is back in the positive because I'm not borrowing against it. So I am back here at the 1.94%. If I did want to go ahead and go to my supply to pull my assets from the supply, so let's say, for example, the Kakinu, I'm not earning anything on it. I don't have any need to borrow against it right now. If I want to go ahead and remove that, I'm going to go ahead and disable it as a collateral. I'm going to approve that transaction. We'll wait for that to confirm. All right, and so now my Kakinu is disabled. All right, so our next step is going to be to go ahead and withdraw that. So I'm going to go ahead and go to withdrawal. I'm going to take all of that out. We'll process that. All right, and then it is now withdrawn. All right, well, that's going to go ahead and wrap up our demo for today. Again, if you are going to be doing any lending or borrowing, really make sure you understand how liquidation works, how some of the other risks that come with leveraging your assets. But did want to at least give you a view of how it works. So if you do find that it is for you, you know, some of the steps for how it's done. But with that, friends, really hope you found this video useful. If you do, we'd really love for you to give a like and a follow. It really does help us out quite a bit. We are going to be posting a whole lot more videos like this, so please stay tuned and let us know if there's something that we haven't covered yet that you want us to cover. We'll make sure to include that in a future video. With that, friends, thanks so much for watching. We'll talk to you soon.